This year at Kurtz Elementary, we wanted to learn more about the brave men and women who have served our country in the armed forces. We thought it would be a good idea to interview relatives of our students. The students enjoyed it so much that we quickly expanded our idea to include any local veterans who would be willing to be interviewed and tell us about their experiences in the service. We want to thank all the veterans who we spoke to. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for your service.
Hello, I'm Duke Stempian, and this is...
Hey, my name is George H. Kinney III.
Cool. What branch did you serve in?
I was in the Army,
What years did you serve?
66 to 73.
What was your rank?
Captain.
Tell us about the jobs that you held.
Second,
Tell us about the jobs that you held.
I got a thousand jobs. So I was a infantry officer. I was Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was a range officer who do shooting and whatever. I was a company commander at Fort Bliss. I was a company commander in Vietnam at 4th or 3rd. I was a recon platoon leader. I was that's the all right.
Is there any memory you would like to share?
No. Sure. Well, in 71, I was wounded very, very seriously in Vietnam. I was a senior advisor to a South Vietnamese battalion. And I went to, stayed in Vietnam for 30 days because they can't fly me out because the carotid artery was severed, and they can't fly me out because it's altitude. And I went to Japan for 10 days and went to Fort. There were 10 days. I don't know where, but we went to Fort Gordon for 2 or 3, 4, 5 months, and then they put me into Lake City, VA in Florida. I bought a house and my wife and whatever, so I was temporary retired list for a year, and then they gave me another application. So I went to Fort Benning, and the doctor said, "Well, we can't use you anymore." So they gave me I was retired on a temporary basis, and then the next year I was permanent retired. So, and
Just want to say thank you for your service.
loved every minute. Loved every minute of it.
Hello, I am Stella Michalowski, and this is...
Franklin J. Quinlan,
What branch did you serve in?
United States Naval Air,
What years did you serve?
from 44 to 46.
What was your rank?
Seaman First Class.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
My main job was to I was a ground crew for the Navy bombers. So my main job was to keep them gassed up and flying.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
Yes, I think the memory was this was a secret base called Crow's Landing. So it was nice to be part of a secret naval operation, you know.
Just want to say thank you for your service.
Always fix it.
Hi, I'm Romy.
Hi, Romy.
And this is Jack Weber.
I'm Jack Weber, yes.
What branch did you serve in?
I was in the United States Navy,
What years did you serve?
1960 to 1964.
What was your rank?
I had, in the Navy, you have also a rate rather than just a rank. My rate was an aviation electronics technician, second class, air crewman. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Tell us about the jobs you held.
I was in a flight crew. I was never on a Navy ship. I flew all the time. Do you know where Hawaii is?
Yeah.
Well, I was actually stationed in Hawaii, and we would go out to Midway Island for 2 weeks out of every month, and we would fly a 15-hour flight from Midway Island to the Aleutian Islands in Alaska and back all in one day. And I was the radio operator on the airplane.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
What's that again?
Is there a memory that you would like to share with us?
Oh, just the whole time I was in the Navy. It was a great place for, at that time, a 17-year-old kid to grow up. But just the whole experience was very, very rewarding. I've made friends that I can call up, say a man that I know down in Sebastian, Florida, and say, Lee, I have a problem. Will you come up and help me? He'll be there the next day. These are friends from back 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Thanks for your service.
Oh, thank you, Romy.
You're going to
Hello,
be on
I'm
that
Duke
computer.
Stempian, and this
You're going to do that.
Joe Dudak.
What branch did you serve in?
I served in the Army.
What years did you serve?
I served from 70 to 76, so 6 years.
What was your rank?
I was a specialist fourth class. That's equivalent to about a sergeant.
Tell us about the jobs that you held.
Well, I was trained as a combat engineer to build bridges, airstrips, roads. But after training to do that, I became a cook for the longest period of time, and that was probably one of the best jobs I had.
Is there any memory you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think the friends that I made is probably the best memory that I have. Just like you have friends in the grades that you're in now. I remember people that I trained with and then went into the service with. Those are names and people's faces you'll remember the rest of your life because you were in such an intense time period with them.
Just want to say thank you for your service.
Well, you're very welcome. I was proud to do it.
Hello, I am Stella Muzlowski, and this is
Marvin Lovelace,
what branch did you serve in?
stationed in the U.S. Army,
What years did you serve?
1984 until 2005.
What was your rank?
I was a Chief Warrant Officer 3,
Tell us about the jobs you held.
Senior Patriot Missile Systems Technician for Patriot Battalion.
Is there
That was the last job I held.
a memory you'd like to share with us?
There's just too many and not enough time, but I would say that the most thing I enjoyed about the military is traveling the world and all the places that I've seen.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
My name is Trey Muzlowski, and I'm Paige Sempian.
My
And
name,
this is
I'm sorry. My name is Bernie Babola.
What branch did you serve in?
I served in the United States Air Force.
What year did you serve?
I served in 1970 through 1974, 1986 through 2009.
What was your rank?
Master Sergeant.
Tell us about the job you held.
I was a jet engine specialist. I worked on B-52s, C-130s, a little bit on jet fighters, and KC-135s.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
Besides this one with you two, I would have to say that just the camaraderie and the friendships that I became involved with, they were a lasting lifetime for me, and I still have a lot of the friends that I had 40 years ago.
I just want to say thank you for your service.
Well, thank you very much, and you too.
Hello, I'm Duke Stempian, and this is.
Gordon Muir.
What branch did you serve in?
I was in the Army.
Cool. What years did you serve?
I was in from 1952 to 55,
What was your rank?
corporal.
And tell us about the jobs you held.
I was with the Adjutant General's Corps. We were stationed for most of my time in Munich, Germany, and it was our job to see that the servicemen, if they were married, especially the officers, that we saw that they were brought over to be with their family, and we found housing for them in the Munich area, and also handled all the PX cards and the Class 6 cards. Class 6 is the booze, if you want to call it that, and the other is cigarettes and all the other stuff from the PX. So we had a lot of fun, good job, and enjoyed it, and really enjoyed Munich, Germany. It was really a nice town.
Cool. Is there any memory you would like to share with us?
Well, I think my best memory of being in the service over there was that I think I was 20 years old, and a couple of us were going to take a trip to Italy from Munich, and the gentleman that was going to be with me at the last moment got ill and couldn't go. So I ended up taking a trip down into Italy all by myself. I couldn't speak Italian, but we spent, I think, about 10 days traveling by train all the way through Italy. It's almost all the towns there. And it was quite something because I think at the age of 19 or 20 that I was, it got me to the point where I could feel like I could do almost anything after that.
Cool. Just want to say thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. Enjoy and appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Rowan Schultz, and this is.
John Mazurkowitz.
What branch did you serve in?
I served in the Army.
What years did you serve?
2 years in 1962 and 1963.
What was your rank?
I was Spec 4 when I was honorably discharged.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
I was stationed at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I was in charge of finance records for the basic trainees. So when the basic trainees came in, I maintained their finance records for 8 weeks. And then when they shipped out, I got a new bunch, and I paid their finance records. And that's what I did.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
You mean about the military?
Anything, pretty much, during the experience.
No, it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it.
Can you tell us about Rolling Thunder?
Rolling Thunder is a nonprofit organization, and our main goal is to keep the public's mind on the fact that there are many, many POWs and MIAs still missing, and we'd like for them to be all accounted for.
What kind of things does Rolling Thunder work on? Projects?
We we do a lot of work for the veterans. We have 2 veterans foster homes in Brighton, and we donate clothes and blankets and whatever food or whatever is needed. And we help veterans out who fall on hard times. For example, we had a guy who was a wounded veteran, and he was having a hard time paying his water bills. And they amounted to a lot of money. So at our meeting, we decided to write a check for $500 and pay his water bills. And it's those kinds of things.
How do people contact you to make donations?
We have a website, Rolling Thunder Michigan5.com, I think it's called. And you can always contact a president or myself.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about Rolling Thunder?
Well, it's a great thing that Kurtz has invited us to celebrate Veterans Day here every year for the past, I think, 5 or 6 years, and it's always a thrill. That's all.
Thanks for coming and thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Hi, this is my papa, Walt Rogalski. What branch did you serve in?
Well, I was in the United States Army, and I was in the 9th Infantry, headquarters battle group, stationed on Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska, Fairbanks, outside of Fairbanks, Alaska. And that's basically where I was for the whole time, for 2 years.
What was your rank?
My rank was specialist, which no longer exists because back then you had specialist, and a specialist was like a private. A specialist 2 was a private first class, and then a specialist 3 was a corporal, and a specialist 4 is what I ended up with, is like a sergeant. And so that was what I was doing, and I was really a ski trooper. We were stationed in Alaska during what was called the Cold War. And the Cold War is there was no real fighting going on, but there was a threat from Russia and their allies and the United States and our allies in the United States. And, they were always really concerned about whether or not there was going to be a war. And so Alaska was the closest place to Russia, because the Russians could come across what they called the Bering Strait, and there would be in Alaska. Alaska was not a state then when I was there. Alaska didn't become a state till sometime later. So people were very concerned in the United States about what was going on. And so what we had to do when we were up in Alaska is we had to have what were called war games. And war games is when they would bring up bunches of soldiers from the United States to come up to Alaska, and then we would have to go through and pretend that we're having a war. No shooting or anything like that, but we were actually preparing ourselves just in case there was going to be a war.
Is there a memory that you would like to share?
Well, there are a lot of memories I think I could share being in during the war games, and there were a lot of war games that we had. Probably every 6 months we'd be having war games. There was one where I was in a helicopter, and we were out. Alaska is a huge state, and so we were out in the deep snows in the wintertime, and we were having war games, and these tanks were on the ground, and they were going around, and so they needed gas. So we were up in the helicopter, and we'd come down as low as we could possibly come out, and we would throw these 50-gallon barrels of gasoline out into the snow so that the tanks could, do that. So that was a memory, because that was kind of scary, just, doing that. there are other memories, of course, being in Alaska. I'm sure everybody has heard about in the wintertime, you don't see any sunlight. And that's true. I mean, it was dark all the time in the winter. And maybe there's a couple of hours of light, but one of my other jobs, besides being a trooper and being in the infantry, was to work in an office. Well, the office didn't have any windows. So all that time we never saw the sun. And then, of course, in the summer, that's all you saw was sun all the time. So that was it's quite a memory. But one of the other things that really impacted me was on Christmas Eve in 1957. I was leaving a restaurant, and the bank thermometer said 57 degrees below zero. And that was really, really cold. So that was, those are some memories that I had of being there. But, one big memory, when I was there, Alaska became a state. So everybody was celebrating and wanting to, just being really happy about it. And there's a little river that ran through Fairbanks, Alaska. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the 50th state to come in. And so they wanted, 50 is the golden anniversary. So they wanted to turn the river into gold. And so they did put some kind of dye in it. It turned it dark green. It didn't turn it gold. But speaking of gold, that's another memory I have. I actually panned for gold in Alaska. And that was the big thing in Alaska. Everybody's panning for gold.
Wait, there's sand in Alaska?
Well, you just went into these rivers and you could pick it up and then sluice it. And so I had a little bit of gold that I found. And that was kind of a cool memory. But the whole thing was memorable. The whole experience was very memorable.
Thank you for serving our country.
Well, thank you.
My name is Jamie Zurowski. My
Hi, Trey.
name's Abdullah Holland.
Hello. My name is Bonnie Wellbaum, or retired Master Sergeant Wellbaum. When I was in the
What
Army,
branches did you serve?
I served for 20 years in the United States Army. Part of it was full-time and part of it was as a reserve soldier.
What did you serve in?
What did I do? I worked in military intelligence and I worked for the Army Security Agency. I got people their top secret security clearances so that they could fly helicopters on nuclear missions, and made sure that if they got in any kind of trouble, they had to have their clearances taken away. They might not have thought about that, but then their family would lose money on their paycheck if they were not able to fly. So that would make them really sad because it made them short of money. Do you have other questions?
What is your rank?
My rank, I was an E8 Master Sergeant. That's 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. What is your other question?
What's about the job you held in?
Tell us about the jobs you held.
Well, I liked it because I got to travel a lot. That's why I went in the military. And my MOS, I had 3 MOSs. That's your job title. I was an Intel analyst and a Charlie, which was listening to intelligence. Intelligence is important information from all the data that you get. I loved the traveling. And then I was a Zulu, which means you're over all the different intel people. They used to have Morse code. I don't think they use that anymore. I liked working with the helicopters. I liked driving. I had a big 2.5-ton truck with a giant bumper this big. I liked being out in the field. When my oldest son was 3 months old, I put my Army hat on him, and I had a combat camouflage scarf, and I used it for a diaper. Not really used it for a diaper, but I put it on him for a picture. And he was only 3 months old, and now he's a major in the Army. And I put that picture on his website, and all of his soldiers really got a good laugh out of that. So his mom, myself, and his dad were both in the military, and now he's been in for like 13 years.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
I was on the first electronic warfare exercise, and that was with all the joint forces, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and that was interesting. A lot of the units that I went to, I was the first woman to come, and I was the first woman in one of the combat units. And everywhere you went, everybody was kind of testing you, to see if you were going to start complaining or something, and to see if you could run the distance when they did their PT. Being the only woman, I lived with another unit and their women because they were not going to give me a barracks all to myself. So I was running 5 and 6 miles a day. So when I got to do PT with my company, they said, now don't fall out, and don't wear cologne, and don't think you're going to bring your knitting. And I said, yeah, that's what I do. That's what I'm going to do. And so when we started a new PT with a new commander, everybody was falling out. So from that day forward, they put me in front of the line, and everybody ran behind me. And I had a lot of good memories. When I was stationed in Europe, I got to travel to Turkey and Istanbul and all over Europe. Went to Africa. It's not all good, but I had a lot of good experiences. I want to say one thing. Right now, at your age, you don't think about it. But sometimes when you get out of high school, you have to really think about whether you might want to go into the military or a government job. Because in order for you to get a top secret security clearance, they go way back, and they talk to not just your friends, but to your neighbors, to your teachers, to see what kind of person you are. So you have to have a good reputation in case you want to do that kind of job. Do any of you think you might want to go in the military?
Maybe.
What would you like to go into? The Air Force or Army or Navy, Coast Guard, Marines?
I don't know. I kind of like the Army a lot.
Yeah, I was in Army. My son's in the Army. My ex-husband was in the Army. There's more women now in all the fields, and I'm really proud of what all of them are doing these days, fighting in combat planes and stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, just want to say thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for being here. You guys have a good day. Is that it?
Hello, my name is Farah, and this is.
Roger Brooks
What branch did you serve in?
in the Marine Corps.
Nice. How many years did you serve?
3 years, 1957 to 1960.
What rank? What rank?
I was a corporal.
Nice. Tell us about the jobs you had.
The job that I had in the Marine Corps, I worked at a Marine Corps helicopter facility in Santa Ana, California.
That's really cool.
And I worked for a captain there. I was his clerk. We were considered base personnel.
That's actually really cool. What are some memories you would like to share with us?
About the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I served in a non-fighting time. I was too late for Korean benefits and too early for Vietnam benefits. Again, I was in 57 to 60. Most of the stuff in Vietnam was after I left.
Nice.
When I left the Marine Corps, I became a Detroit policeman, so I'm a retired Detroit police sergeant. And I more recently worked, I was Judge Bondi's clerk in the district court in Novi.
Nice. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
All right.
United States
My name is Trey Musilowski. And I'm Paige Champion, and this is...
Glenn Avers,
What branch did you serve in?
Army Signal,
What year did you serve in?
62 to 65,
What was your ranking?
Spec 4.
Tell us about the job you held.
When I first went in the service, I joined up into New Jersey for 5-6 months of school, and I went down to Oklahoma for a couple of months and sent me to Vietnam. I was there for 13 months, and then I came back and went to war too, right outside of DC in the mountain. Top secret.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
And we got a hold record player over and make him playing AFRS stuff. They made sure call us and we got in trouble, but that was fun.
We want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I'm Amaya Marzak, and this is...
Jim Burns,
What branch did you serve in?
U.S. Air Force.
What years did you serve?
1958 through 1962.
What was your rank?
My rank was Senior Airman.
Tell us about the job you held.
I was in security, which they called at that time Air Police, and we did security for on airplanes, fighter jets, and some bigger bombers.
Is there a memory that you would like to share with us?
Well, I served in the Air Force, and I was down in Texarkana, Arkansas for a few years, and then we sent me to Alaska, to Galena Air Force Base, which was in the boonies up there with all the bears and trees. And we were like 10 minutes away from Russia at the time by airplane. So we were in a very good area where we were a first line base.
Cool. Thank you for your service.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for the interview.
I'm Belle, and this is my grandpa.
How to do? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
What branch did you serve in?
What branch? I served in the U.S. Navy, amphibious assault branch.
What was your rank?
My rank most of the time was seaman because I was misbehaving. When you misbehave, you kind of get stuck, and I got stuck.
Tell us about the job you did.
The job I did? Well, there was hundreds of them, but the main thing that we did in the assault is we moved all the supplies from the big ships into the islands because the big ships couldn't get in to supply the Army and the Marines and whoever was doing the fighting. They needed ammo and food. That's what we did. Ship to shore, ship to shore, ship to shore. 24 hours a day for every day that we were out there, which was a couple of years.
Is there any memories you would like to share with us?
Memories?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be old before I got them all out. But I can't think of anything except it was a long ways from home, and there were no cities out there in the middle of the Pacific. And so you got along as best you could. And I guess that's what my memories are, that I was away from home too long.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, dear.
Hello, my name is Trey Musilowski.
And I'm David Fett.
What branch did you serve in?
I'm currently serving in the Army.
What years did you serve?
I've been in for 2 years, currently serving.
What was your rank?
I was a private first class, and now I'm currently a cadet.
What other jobs that you held?
I was a basic infantryman, and then now I'm a platoon leader at the 1-8 Deuce Alpha Battery.
Is there any memory that you would share with us?
Seeing a live fire during the night and watching rockets fire off from HIMARS.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
My name is Trey Muzurowski. Hello, I am Paige Sempion, and this is...
Warren Johnson,
What branch did you serve in?
the Army.
What year did you serve in?
I served from 1965 to 1971.
What was your rank?
Spec 4.
Tell us about the job you held.
My MOS, which is Military Occupational Specialty, was aircraft maintenance, and I was also the company mail clerk in Vietnam.
Okay. Is there any memory you would like to share with us?
Sure. When I was in basic training, being so short, my rifle was an M14, which was almost as tall as I was, and I ended up shooting sharpshooter.
Just want to thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Romy, and this is
My name is Bob Szymanski.
how many years did you serve?
I served about 4 years from 1966 until 1970.
What service were you in?
I was in the Air Force. I spent 2 years in Alaska and 18 months in Alabama and 6 months in Texas.
What was your rank?
I was called a buck sergeant. I had 3 stripes.
How many years did you serve?
You already asked me that question.
That's
So
okay.
we'll pass on that one.
Do you have any memories that you'd like to share with us?
Not a lot of special memories. I remember first time when I went to Alaska, I thought it was going to be all dirt streets and things like that, but it was a thriving, modern metropolis. And it just so happened that I arrived there 2 years after the worst earthquake that ever happened in Alaska.
Thanks for your service.
You're very welcome.
I'm Maya Marzak, and this is...
Richard Faulkner,
What was the branch you served in?
United States Army,
What years did you serve in?
1953 to 1956,
What was your rank?
Sergeant.
Tell us about the job you held.
Well, after I finished with basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky, I went directly over to Korea, and I was involved with tanks. I drove tanks, I shot their guns, I just had a lot of fun with tanks. I did.
Is there a memory that you would like to share with us?
Well, I guess the most important memory I have was when I finished up in Korea. I came back and I still had another year to go. So they assigned me to Fort Myer, Virginia, which is where the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is located. And it's a pretty interesting place. If you ever have an opportunity, you should visit Fort Myer, Virginia, or Arlington Cemetery, same thing. So I spent 13 months there, and I found that very enjoyable, even though we had a lot of different parades and different things we had to perform. Very interesting. It was very cool.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Hello, I am April Callahan, and this is...
I'm Don Green.
What branch did you serve in?
I was in the Coast Guard
What years did you serve?
from 1966 to 1970.
What was your rank?
I went in as a seaman recruit and came out as a E5 petty officer.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
Well, I did everything from washing floors, cleaning bathrooms when I started out. And then I got into rebuilding engines and working on engines. And then I went into law enforcement.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
The memory was it was a really good time. It was very, very informative for me. I was 17 when I went in, so I helped me grow up.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Duke Stempian, and this is.
I am Major Oakman L. Hurd, United States Army retired,
Cool. What branch did you serve in?
in the Army and the Transportation Corps
What years did you serve?
from 1957 to 1981.
What was your rank?
My rank in retirement was Major.
Tell us about the jobs that you held.
My main job was a helicopter pilot. I was the maintenance officer test pilot.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
I spent 2 years flying in Vietnam. I have a Silver Star, Bronze Star, 2 Bronze Stars, 13 air medals. And main job I had in Vietnam was whatever it took to fly anywhere, doing anything. Getting my Silver Star, I attempted to save 4 lives of a helicopter pilot that was shot down. Unfortunately, when I arrived, they were gone. I did bring to show you. This is what a Silver Star looks like.
Whoa.
So most people have never seen this. This is the second highest combat medal that you can get. And I brought you so you can see what the Bronze Star looks like. And that's, I have 2 of these. Of course, all of them have a tail. I could spend hours talking to you. But can't think of anything else to say. If you want to,
Okay. Just want to say thank you for your service.
I thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jamie Zalowski, and this is
Gary Stern,
What branch did you serve in?
U.S. Air Force.
What year did you serve?
I served from 1974 to 1978.
What was your rank?
Sergeant.
Tell us about the job you held.
I was a medical specialist working in a hospital.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
Yes, I had to drive an ambulance 45 miles down a mountain pass to help deliver a baby. When I got to the hospital, the baby was delivered five minutes later.
Just want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm April, and I'm here with.
John Hanna.
What branch did you serve in?
I served in the United States Marine Corps.
What years did you serve?
I served from December 1951 through November 1953.
What was your rank?
My rank was sergeant.
Can you tell us about the jobs you held?
I volunteered for combat after I completed telephone repairman school, which lasted for 6 months. And I was placed with the Air Wing and went over to Korea. And I was placed in charge of a group of men, about 6 people, that were at an air traffic control outpost. And while we were at this outpost, my job was to supervise the maintenance of communications within our outpost, and also for about 25 miles back to the Air Force base. At an air traffic control outpost, we guide the planes out from the airport forward on their mission, and then we'd guide them back, whether it was day or night.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
Yes. My memories that I remember most were the people that lived in huts, and they had they had no electricity, and they had to fish in the sea and plant crops to eat, and it reminded me of how much I had back home in the United States and how much more that we had also. I also went to Japan twice on R&R, which is rest and relaxation, and I also went to Hong Kong. And on the way over there, I was transferred we were put on a cruiser, and then we were transferred to an aircraft carrier, spent 5 days in Hong Kong, and then were transferred by the aircraft carrier to a cruiser back to Korea. And shortly after that trip to Hong Kong, I went home. My tour of duty in Korea had been completed.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
All right, very nice.
Hello, I'm Rowan, and this is Mr. Robinson. What branch did you serve in?
Hi, I served in the United States Army, 3rd Infantry, in Arlington National Cemetery.
What years did you serve?
I served from 1970 to 1976.
What was your rank?
I was a sergeant.
Tell us about the job you held.
Well, my job is very unique for the Army, and in fact, for all the armed forces. I rode horses. I rode horses for the presidential details and for Arlington National Cemetery. One of the things I did is our funerals, and this is me in a picture here in Arlington, and this is actually called a caisson. And a caisson itself is pulling the remains of a war veteran, a hero, to their final resting place. Another thing we did was pull ceremonial units, sort of like this one here. And this is something I picked up President Nixon on, and we reviewed the troops along with the King of Belgium, staying alongside of him. So we did a lot of honor details. We've got a lot of great details. Here's one in the Pentagon News, which is another funeral we did. Thank you.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
I pretty much shared them already. One of the biggest ones is burying Audie Murphy in one of those funeral details. He's the highest decorated hero of World War II. High honor funeral. Another one is Admiral Stark, and of course another one is picking up President Nixon and pulling the President of the United States around reviewing our troops. Where he actually tapped me on the shoulder and told me to slow down.
Cool, thanks for coming. We appreciate your service.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Hello, I'm Salome Zlowski, and this is...
Frederick Otieno.
What branch did you serve in?
I still serve in the Merchant Marine.
What years did you serve?
I'm still active.
What was your rank?
I'm a lieutenant rank, first engineer.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
Engineering.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, when we lost the plant maneuvering into Sasebo, then I had to bring it up quickly. You know what maneuvering is? When the ship is coming in, and you lose plant coming in, that's an accident-prone thing. But we had to bring it back up quickly. Yes.
Just want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you too.
What's your name?
Well, my name?
Yeah.
Ron Navorsky. Nevorski. That's Polish. We call it South Bend Irish.
How many years did you serve?
Oh, 3.
What was
It
your rank?
seemed like a lifetime. Yeah. Are you from Milford? You are, aren't you? Do you ever go to Central Park? You see that battlefield cross with the helmet and the rifle and the boots? I did that. That was my project. I did it to remember all the fallen veterans that didn't make it back home. That battlefield cross, what we do, it's when somebody is killed in action and we can't make it home to do the funeral for them, with them. We pay them the honors by taking their rifle and their boots and then put the helmet on top of their rifle. That's why it's called the Battlefield Cross. It's for us veterans that are still overseas that couldn't make it home to do the funeral for one of our comrades.
Thank you for your service.
What?
Thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. It's because of kids like you is why we're proud to have done what we did. I have 5 grandchildren. Well, I have 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. So when always veterans at Memorial Day, when all you kids are out to hold that little flag waving, that's what made it all worth it for us. Someday you'll really understand that.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paige, and this is
My name is Philip Whiteloff.
what branch did you serve in?
I served in the United States Army.
What year did you serve?
I served from 1962 to 1964.
What was your rank?
Sergeant.
Tell us about the job you held.
Okay, I was trained in combat infantryman, and then my second MOS. MOS stands for Military Occupational Specialty in Transportation. And I would end up working with a training unit. And at 19 years old, I spent most of my time driving around in a Jeep.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
I think the only memory I would like to share with you is after I did all my training and got assigned a unit, the company commander asked me to be his personal driver. And so my job was to be dressed very sharp every day and then drive him around wherever he had to go. So I spent a lot of time doing that. That was a pretty good duty.
Just to say thank you for your service.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Hello, I am April Callahan, and this is...
I'm Bill Jameson.
What branch did you serve in?
I was in the Navy
What years did you serve?
from 83 to 85.
What was your rank?
I was an E3.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
I was a Navy corpsman, which means I was a medic. I worked in a hospital and I also worked with the Marines.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
Well, there was a lot of memories I loved, but I worked in the labor and delivery department and delivered babies for 3 months, and that was probably the funnest 3 months of my life.
Just want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you for having me.
My name is Tremy Zhulowski. Hello, I am Paige Sempion, and this is...
Warren Johnson,
What branch did you serve in?
the Army.
What year did you serve in?
I served from 1965 to 1971.
What was your rank?
Spec 4.
Tell us about the job you held.
My MOS, which is Military Occupational Specialty, was aircraft maintenance, and I was also the company mail clerk in Vietnam.
Okay. Is there any memory you would like to share with us?
Sure. When I was in basic training, being so short, my rifle was an M14, which was almost as tall as I was, and I ended up shooting sharpshooter.
just want to thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Farah, and this is
Michael Willingans.
what branch do you serve in?
I was in the United States Army, assigned to NATO headquarters, so I was technically a member of NATO.
How many years were you in service?
I was in active service from 1957 to 1960.
Okay. What was your rank?
My rank was Specialist 4, which is about a corporal.
Okay.
But rank didn't matter a lot at NATO headquarters because your buddy could be a 5-star general. Just people doing a job. I kept the phones running. That was my job. So,
You already answered that question.
yes.
What is there any memories you would like to share with us?
I was, because I worked at night, I went into the city to live in Paris. And I left my room open at night, and students who didn't have hotel money would come over, and I'd go there in the morning and find a conversation going in Korean over here and Norwegian over there and Italian. It was our Boklund Svanse Club. And we spoke. If you didn't know it in that guy's language, somebody else in the room did. They had a lot of fun with speaking different languages.
I have a question for you. Like, if you came in the morning and you just came in and someone said hi but in a different language, and you're like, what?
Well, you try to respond in that language if you can. Bonjour. Bonjour, that's because everybody was in France. But if you say, Ahlan wa sahlan, it'd be Arabic. Or Guten Morgen, was haben Sie gesagt? Bom dia, in Portuguese. Yeah, so a lot of, you picked up how to say things. Io non parlo bene portuguese. I can't speak Portuguese very well. Ni escuta te cuela. You're speaking too fast in Chinese. But I'm a linguist, so I like that stuff. Okay, you're in a
Thank you for your service. Bye.
It was my honor, my privilege.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Stella Mizulowski. Hello, I am Trey Mizulowski. And this is Mr. Young. What branch did you serve?
I was in U.S. Navy submarine service,
What years did you serve?
1964 through 1969.
What was your rank?
My rank when I got out was lieutenant.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
Oh, wow. Let's see. I was weapons officer on 2 different submarines. I was engineering officer and weapons officer on this one. And I was navigator on a submarine out in New London, Connecticut.
What was it like in the water?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not scary at all. You just have to be very careful. And you do interesting things. And you have great food. It's a good place to be.
Is it really crowded in the submarine?
Extremely. You know everybody.
Is there any memory you would like to share with us?
I will just say it was a lot of fun and I met some terrific people.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
What branch did you serve?
I was in the Army for 15 years.
Do you want to introduce him? Who is this?
My grandpa,
Oh, what's your grandpa's name?
Jay.
All right, Jay. And he was in the Army for 15 years. You want to ask him your second question?
What was your rank?
My rank was specialist. I was a medic, so all medics are specialists.
Tell us about the job you did.
I was a medic and I took care of sick people and people who got hurt. I patched them up and whatever else they needed.
Isabella, do you want to have Isaac come over here and help him read the last one?
Is there a memory what you would like to share with us?
Well, the only memories that I like to share are the good times I had with all my friends, especially when I was overseas in Germany. And I had a lot of good friends over there. And I hope to see them again someday.
You guys want to give your grandpa a hug? And thanks for coming.
You don't have to, but I know you don't want to.
Thank you for coming.
Hello, I am Stella Muzalowski, and this is
I'm Tom Oldesvig.
what branch did you serve and what branch did you
I
serve?
served in the United States Army.
What years did you serve?
I was in there from 1967 to 1970. Then I was out for a while. Then I had a couple more years, and I had a total of 8 years in the Army.
What was your rank?
I was a sergeant.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
I was a tank. I was in tanks in Vietnam, and I was in armored reconnaissance. I was a commander, and I was 19 years old, and I commanded 36 people. And I was in combat. I was wounded 4 times, and yeah.
Is there any memory you would like to share with us?
Well, I was glad that I served. I was glad I had the opportunity to serve my country.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sophie. Hi, my name is Calvin.
And I'm their grandfather, Dick McDonald. We're here to talk about my time in the service, I guess.
What branch did you serve in? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard?
In the Marines. I got drafted. You know what drafted means? Way back then in the 60s, you had to sign up for what they called the draft. If you were a male and you were 16, that meant you were subject to being called into the service. And I was called in when I was 20. I was called into the Army, but I had 30 days to report, and during that 30 days, I went and joined the Marine Corps.
What was your rank?
I ended up being a sergeant, which is called an E5. The lowest was an E1. When I was overseas, I was a corporal, which it goes private first class, corporal. Lance corporal, corporal, and sergeant. I ended up being a sergeant when I got out of the service.
Tell us about your job you did.
Well, that was kind of funny. You do when you sign up, they do tests like you get in school, and it tells what you're best suited for. And I was suited for a clerk because I did pretty well in math back then. But when I got my orders, and I got orders to go overseas to Vietnam, and when we arrived there, the first thing they did was put us in a line and tell us they didn't need clerks. And they put me in the infantry, which meant I was on the lines out fighting like a soldier. Not like a soldier, I was a soldier.
Is there a memory you'd like to share with us?
Well, I can tell you that when I first went in, like I said, I was 20, and my basic training was in San Diego, California. And it was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane. I flew out there and they put us through what they called accelerated service because they needed men overseas. And I can tell you my first night, we got in about 1 o'clock in the morning, and my hair was like it's always been, about this length. And they put us in for a haircut, which basically is 3 swipes with a razor. And they gave us duty to wash down the restrooms. Yeah, just to prove that we were put us in our place. They went in the restrooms first and turned on all the water, then turned it off, so everything had drops on it. We had to clean it. But that's the first time that we saw each other, saw ourselves with our haircut. And I was like a walking tennis ball. So I remember that. The last memory I had was actually when I came back from overseas. And back then, there were no cell phones, there was no internet. So when you were gone overseas, you didn't talk to anybody, your family. Like I didn't talk to them for 18 months.
Wow.
So we'd write a letter. If I was writing a letter to you, it would take about 3 weeks for you to get it. And we didn't know that the war was unpopular and how we were going to get treated. The flip side of that is we were treated so bad we came home. Is that now, and that's one of the reasons we love the way Milford treats the veterans and why you always have a lot of veterans in the parade and these ceremonies here, because we get treated so much better we did. And those are basically the memories because they were so different back then than they are now.
Cool. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I'm Amaya Marzak, and this is.
Henry Storm,
What branch did you serve in?
United States Navy,
What years did you serve?
from 1963 until 1996.
What was your rank?
I was a enlisted man for 18 and a half years. Then I got a commission as a warrant officer, and I retired as lieutenant commander.
Tell us about the job you held.
I had a wide and varied career. I spent 7 years down in Antarctica in Operation Deep Freeze, supporting the scientists down in Antarctica. I was on Antarctic soil or Antarctic ice for 6 months out of the year, and the other 6 months we were back in Davisville, Rhode Island. Then I was aboard the USS Guadalcanal. That's a helicopter aircraft carrier. It has 500 sailors, 2,500 Marines, and I deployed on that to the Mediterranean Sea. Then I had 4 years of shore duty in Puerto Rico. We have a naval base down there at Roosevelt Roads and at Vieques, and then they closed that when President Clinton was president. Then I went aboard the USS America, which is an attack carrier, CV-66. I spent 4 years on the America, and I worked on the flight deck. I did aviation fuels, aircraft handling, catapults and arresting gear, firefighting, crash and smash they called it, and parking airplanes on the flight deck. Then I did 2 years on staff in Norfolk, Virginia. I was responsible for certifying the flight decks on all of the aircraft carriers on the East Coast of the United States. Then I got a commission as a warrant officer, and I went to the USS Forrestal out of Mayport, Florida. I spent 4 years on the Forrestal. Then I transferred to the USS Independence. I spent 2 years on the USS Independence, again working on the flight deck. Then I went to shore duty in Tennessee. I was responsible for all aviation training east of the Mississippi River. I had 42 schools in 26 locations. Then I went aboard the USS Constellation. It's another aircraft carrier. It was out of North Island in California. Then I went aboard the USS Kitty Hawk, another aircraft carrier, also in North Island, California. Then I was injured in a shipboard accident. I broke my neck, and they transferred me to Detroit, Naval Air Station, Detroit, and that's where I retired.
Is there a memory that you would like to share with us?
I'm sorry?
Is there a memory that you would like to share with us?
Sure. Being 17 years old and being told that I'm going to be at the South Pole. And I got off the airplane. It was 58 degrees below zero. And you were so covered in clothing, you couldn't identify anybody else. Everybody looked exactly the same. It looked like a bunch of abominable snowmen walking around like the abominable snowman down in Antarctica. But it turned out to be one of the most beautiful places I was ever stationed.
Oh, cool. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you so much for supporting us, and it was my pleasure to serve my God, my country, and my fellow citizens.
Hi,
Who are you?
Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is
Bill Brown,
What branch did you serve in?
the United States Marine Corps.
Cool. I actually really like the Marines.
Oh, good, because I like you too.
How many years did you serve?
I served from June of 1962 to July of 1965.
Okay.
So that's 3 years.
Okay. Tell us about the jobs you had.
Well, actually, I had 6 jobs. They're called MOSs. And I had MOS in communications. And I also held in telephones, hanging lines. I had an MOS in small weapons. I had an MOS in munitions, or how to make bombs. And I had an MOS in long-range rifle shooting. That's it.
Can you tell us about the memories you had?
Tell you about what?
Can you tell us about the memories you had?
The memories?
Yeah, like if you.
I was just telling your principal that we were prior to the actual going into Vietnam, so I spent most of my time when I was overseas, other than going to school. I went to the Philippines for 8 weeks to learn jungle training, learn to live in the jungle. And then I spent 2 weeks in Japan climbing Mount Fuji to learn winter training. And then the rest of the time we were aboard a ship called the Princeton, which was a World War II aircraft carrier, converted to Marine. They call it an environment ship. And it was loaded with helicopters and a regiment of Marines. And we just basically floated 20 miles off the Vietnam coast, waiting to be called in. So we were all prepared to go in on the helicopters. So we basically slept, ate, and I told your principal we played pinochle, which you probably know what it is.
I don't know what that is.
Go look it up.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your service.
Well, you're welcome. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Romy Gutierrez, and this is
Larry Shaver, U.S. Air Force from 1956 to 1960. I was a crew chief on an F-104's aircraft, stationed in several different places.
Could you tell us about the jobs that you held?
Well, basically, I was a crew chief, which consists of basically managing an aircraft. My job was to make sure that everybody, like the ammo people, the oxygen people, the hydraulic people, all the engine people, they all came to me. They would get a report from us, tell us if there's something wrong with the airplane. That was my job, was then to call them and ask them to come out and fix the aircraft. So my job was to coordinate all these people. And I did that for 4 years.
Do you have any memories that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I spent 6 months in Spain, which was quite interesting. I was there on, we had what we call overseas rotation. And during that rotation, we would, our group and each group beyond us, we would fly to Spain, spend 6 months there, and then come back to the States. And that was rather interesting. I liked that.
Thanks for serving our country.
You're welcome.
Good job. Well done.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is.
David Wagner,
What branch did you serve in?
United States Coast Guard.
Cool. How many years did you serve?
I served 4 from 1963 to 1967.
What was your rank?
I was an electrician mate second class, which is an E5, like
Cool.
pay grade.
Tell us about the jobs you had.
Well, I suppose we'll start work from the beginning. I enlisted in the Coast Guard in August of 1963 after finishing high school, and went to basic training in Cape May, New Jersey, for 13 weeks. In fact, I was in a cab heading to Philadelphia to fly home when we heard on the radio that the President of the United States had been shot in Dallas. That was John F. Kennedy, who got killed while I was heading home from leave. So pretty significant day. From there, I went on leave, and then I went back to base Boston briefly. And then from there, I was sent to Groton, Connecticut, where I went to electrician school. And that was for another 4 months. So by end of April of 1964, I was given orders and I reported aboard the Coast Guard cutter Eastwind. And the Eastwind was an icebreaker whose mission was to break ice, clearly. And by October 1st of that year, we headed south to Antarctica. And we went through the Panama Canal, and we stopped in New Zealand and got some groceries, and then went on down to McMurdo Sound in Antarctica. And that was to support the U.S. Antarctic mission. And along the way, coming and going, we saw lots of things, not to mention a lot of penguins down in Antarctica. It was one of the best times of my life, and it was an exciting time. And we on the way back home, while we were down there, we stopped and went back and forth to New Zealand, and then we went to Pongo Pongo and Fiji in the South Pacific. And on the way home, we stopped in places like Uruguay and Buenos Aires. I keep forgetting Buenos Aires, Argentina, and also Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and then finally Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, on the way home. But it was quite an adventure to be on a trip like that. From there, we got back in Boston in 1965 on May 1st. I remember all these dates pretty well. And it was, we beat the ship up pretty bad down in Antarctica, breaking ice. So we had to go into dry dock for a little while. And they repaired the ship, and we got going again in June. So that, and from there we went up to Greenland. And we broke some ice so they could get supplies into the mission up in Greenland, with the things they couldn't fly in. On the way home from Greenland, we were up there about 6 weeks. On the way home, we hit an iceberg rather hard in Baffin Bay, which is in the same general vicinity that the Titanic went down, except we were better equipped to handle it. And I happened to be standing on the flying bridge, which is way above where they navigate the ship. It's a little place above that. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and this is like a little after midnight after I'd gotten off watch. And we hit that iceberg so hard that ice chips were flying back and hitting us on the head and stuff. And in the melee, I slipped and fell and broke my wrist. But I didn't tell anybody. Because I was a tough guy. I was 19 years old. I had an ace bandage and I wrapped it up. Done deal, right? Except it hit a little funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we got back into Boston and got a little bit of rest and recreation. And I met my future wife, and then we headed back to Antarctica. Same mission, a little shorter time this time. We're only gone about 4 months on that trip. But again, we saw a lot of new faces and new places and all that kind of stuff. Great fun. But in 1966, in spring of 1966, they said that since I had been on such arduous duty, that I could pick from my choice of the next destination, my next duty station. Well, that wasn't quite accurate, but I can't complain. I picked the Coast Guard cutter Eagle, which is a sailing ship, a three-masted sailing schooner that the Coast Guard cadets from the Coast Guard Academy sail on in the summer times. Usually they go to the Mediterranean, and but they have to have a crew of enlisted people, like electricians, because they have electricity on board now. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
And but I didn't get to go there. Well, my second choice was a lightship in Nantucket, which is near Cape Cod. I didn't get that. And I forget where the third one was. I think anywhere in the 9th Coast Guard District, which was the Great Lakes. Never got there. So, but I got something called the Coast Guard cutter White Heath, which was a 133-foot buoy tender, a lot smaller ship, and I was a crew of about 20. And we went to somewhere between Eastport, Maine, and I forgot about the northern trip. We've been to a bunch of places going up north on the Eastman, but I'll skip that part. Some of these memories get old. Anyway, we on the White Heath, we'd go up to as far as Eastport, Maine, and as nearby as Provincetown on Cape Cod, and we tie up in Boston at night. We tie up someplace every night, which was quite a change from the previous time when we'd be gone for 7 months at a time. I was able to have an apartment, and I, wined and dined my future bride, and and it was good to be close to home, so to speak. I made my home at that point in Boston, and we roll forward to 1967, and I was getting a little pressure to stay in, perhaps. And in some respects, I look back on it, and it was the greatest adventure of my life, and it would have been fine. I could have done it, except I didn't think it would make for a good family life. Well, I hadn't discussed it with my betrothed, and she said, in the last couple of years we have talked about it, and she said, wait a minute, it worked. But anyway, I got out, despite the offers that the Coast Guard was giving me, a whole bunch of $1967 to stay in. And he said, well, we're going to give you a promotion in pay, make you a first-class petty officer. We're going to give you $10,000 in 1967, which was a lot of money. And all I had to do was stay in for 6 more years. And that if I stayed for 6, I might as well stay for 20, which would have meant I would get a retirement. But I decided to get out, in spite of the fact that they offered to send me to Vietnam. There's a war going on over there. But I was a young man. I didn't care. I'd have gone over if I wanted to stay in, but I didn't. I got out at the time, and that's kind of my story. But it was the adventure of a lifetime. And I would, for any young person, I would recommend. By the way, when I got out, I had the benefit of the GI Bill, which isn't near as good as it is now. And I went to college after that, and grad school and all that other stuff that got me further along in life. And frankly, I wouldn't have been able to afford it, and I certainly wasn't mature enough when I first finished high school in 1963 to go to school. I wouldn't have studied probably. I'd have been playing, whatever at night. And so it isn't a bad. I encourage my own children not to go directly from high school to college. It was better they should have a little bit of life under their belt. And I don't have any college friends I keep up with. But I have friends from the Coast Guard Cutter Eastwind that we have a reunion every 2 years, and there aren't many of us left because I was at this point. If you're over 68 or 69, I think it is, you would be too old or too young rather. If you're less than 69, you'd have been too young to have ever been on the Eastwind because they decommissioned it in 1968 after we beat it up so bad. And that's kind of the essence of my story. But do you have more questions?
But you just answered the last one.
Well, I think I've been through this before, so maybe I anticipated your journalism. But anyway, it was fun talking to you, and I'm glad to be able to say my story. And so any young person who's thinking about either going to the Coast Guard Academy, which they have one just like the other branches, and you come out with a degree in engineering if you are capable of getting in. And on the other hand, even as an enlisted person, men or women, all the branches have women. We didn't in those days, which was, we used to kid about when we were down in Antarctica. Not to worry, because when we got there, there would be a girl behind every tree. You know what was wrong with that? No trees. Okay, any more for me? It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks. Thank you for serving.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stella Mizulowski, and this is
John Bell
What branch did you serve
in the United States Navy.
What years did you serve?
I was in the Navy from July of 1949 to June of 1953.
What was your rank?
I was a petty officer, yeoman second class.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
The job I held was primarily one of in the office. I was like a secretary to the commanding officer and took care of all of the paperwork.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
Well, one of the stories I like to tell is if you believe salt water doesn't freeze, don't believe that. When I first went into the ship and I was on a destroyer, which is a very small ship, we went up to the North Pole And in the North Pole, the seas got pretty rough, and all of the ocean water, salt water, got on the ship and on all of the lines, and it froze. And what we had to do is take forks and knives and climb up these lines and chip off all that ice. Otherwise, because of the weight, we might have just toppled right over. So that's a story that I always remember, a fork and knife chipping away salt water from our ship.
Just want to say thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
This is Mr. This is Lewis Bradbury,
This is Lewis Bradbury.
and we've got a couple questions for him.
What branch did you serve in?
Army,
What years did you serve?
what years? I served for 2 years.
What was your rank?
I was drafted into there when I was 18 years old.
Tell us about the job that you held.
Well, they was surprised to find out that I was a professional driver. I drove semi before I was drafted. And once they found out that I could drive those things, they put me in them immediately. And I drove a tank, a medium tank, weighs about 30-some ton. And I had three of us from the same city in New York State.
Wow.
And my tank commander was Fred Engstrom from Snake River, Idaho. And periodically, one of the officers would get in a tank with me because I could drive the thing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
Is there a special memory that you'd like to share about your time in the service?
Yeah. I spent 3 days in Rome, Italy. And the reason for that is I had a piece of steel in my leg here and a piece of steel in my hand. And I had to get it out of my hand in order to drive because it was levers that you used to steer it with. So when I got that done, they put me right back into the tank again. I was only gone for 3 days.
Wow.
Would you like to share anything about your special team?
Anything, share special with
About your special cane?
I've only had this a week.
It's beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about what's on it?
Oh, why don't you just read it? See, there's my sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find down here is the outfit that I was with. Here, you can read the whole thing.
So you were in the 707th Tank Battalion.
Mhm.
And you have a Purple Heart, as you just told us. And what years were you in the service?
Oh, that's hard for me to say. I was born in 1924. And 15. I can't remember how many years it was.
That's all right. See,
I was
It was
18 years old when they drafted me.
I see that you got your Purple Heart in 1944.
Yeah.
Right?
That tells you better than I can.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice keepsake. There's a couple of pictures on here of, you said that this was what you looked like. This was when you were drafted. Here, this one here. Is that when you first went in?
No,
to the
I
army?
was in northern Italy.
Oh, that's when you were okay. So that's when you served. This is what you looked like.
Yes, I was in northern Italy.
And then on the other side, this was when you led the parade in Milford.
The last one we had here.
Mm-hmm. Right. So this is a pretty awesome cane. Someone did they hand carved the handle for you as well?
The whole cane.
The whole thing. It's beautiful.
They found out that I like things like this, and with me being my age, which I'm 94.
Wow.
And once they found that out, they started doing things for me.
Wow. I think you deserve it.
Well, we try.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for your service.
You're entirely welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Hi, I'm Abdullah. And this is.
Hi, I'm John.
What branch did you serve in?
I served in the Army National Guard.
Nice. What years did you serve?
I served from 1960 to 1966.
Cool. What was your rank?
Private.
Tell us about the jobs you had.
I worked at the Nike missile site, which is an anti-aircraft missile.
Really cool.
I was a launcher crewman. I liked it.
Is there any memories you would like to share with us?
Any what?
Any memories you would like to share with us?
Well, I just, as I said, I enjoyed it actually, because I had never been around missiles before, and it was quite an experience to see all the electronics and the radar and everything involved in it.
That sounds really cool.
It was. I thought so.
Thanks for sharing with us.
You're very welcome. That's
Also,
it.
thanks for serving.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Avery, and your name is?
Elena Glinter.
What branch did you serve in?
I served in the United States Navy.
What years did you serve in?
I served from 2013 to 2018.
What was your rank?
I was in ABF 3, which is an E4, so I did aviation bosun's mate fuels.
Tell us about the jobs you held.
So what I did is when we deployed, I worked with aircraft. I fueled small boats. And there's these bigger boats that go up on land when you're deployed to different countries, and I fueled those too.
Is there a memory you would like to share with us?
I guess just I was able, when I joined the military, to go to about 7 different countries. And it was really nice to learn the different cultures and see those different areas and historical places.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Duke Stempian, and this is
Paul Clark.
what branch did you serve in?
I served in the Army
Cool. What years did you serve?
from 1985 to 1992.
What was your rank?
Specialist E4.
Tell us about the jobs that you held.
So my job is what they call missile maintenance. So they had missiles on tanks, and my job was to repair and maintain them, and I had to go on site in the fields and make sure they worked.
Is there any memory you would like to share with us?
So when I was in the Army, I was stationed in Germany, and Germany at the time was East Germany and West Germany. It was divided, much like North and South Korea is today. And so I got a chance to see the border, and it was basically a minefield there. So that was very fascinating. And also, I met my wife in Germany.
Cool.
My wife was stationed in the town that I was, or she lived in the town that I was stationed in. And well, we got married after I got out, and we've been married for almost 30 years. We have 2 kids, and she just became a U.S. citizen.
Cool. Just want to say thank you for your service.
You're very welcome, and thank you for your support.
It's awesome. My name is April Callahan, and this is
Dawson Innes.
Where are you going to boot camp?
Going to boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina.
Why did you decide to join the Marines?
wanted to join the Marines because the Marines are the best branch, and if you want to be the best, you got to join the best.
What job do you hope to have when you're done with basic training?
I'm going into the infantry. From there, I'll be signed an infantry-based job for rifleman or machine gunner.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
My name is Brody, and this is my grandfather, Mark. What branch did you serve in?
I was in the United States Marine Corps.
What was your rank?
My rank was Sergeant E5.
Tell us about the job you did.
When I first got to Vietnam, I was in the 3rd Provisional Rifle Brigade. I did search and destroy missions, patrols, and observation posts. Later on, my primary job was to make pure water, because water is very important in Vietnam. We had to put a lot of chlorine in the water to kill all the bugs. And in order to make it taste better, you had to add Kool-Aid to it. So everybody would send home and get their moms and dads to send them packages of Kool-Aid to make the water more drinkable.
Is there a memory that you would like to share with us?
It was so very, very hot over there. We called it Vietnam hot because it was something that you're not used to in the United States. It's just 105, 110 degrees would be very cool to say. And when the monsoon seasons would come, that means it would rain and it would rain and it would rain, not like for a week, but for like a month. And it would get down to like 80 degrees and everything was cold and damp. And 80 degrees sounds warm to you, but it was very, very cold for us.
Thank you for your service.
For sure.
Several Kurt students visited the War Dog Memorial in South Lyon, Michigan. There, we learned about four-legged heroes who served our country.
Cody. Smart dog. This is for law enforcement. That's a law enforcement flag. You see the blue line? Down. You see the blue line?
Yeah.
Well, that's law enforcement. That's why it's different.
What's that flag up there?
That's a POW flag. That's to honor the POWs that we have not found in different conflicts.
And is that dedicated to one dog, or is this kind of just like saying all the dogs that served?
This monument here was actually dedicated to World War I and World War II, for both. Now, in World War I, the United States didn't have a dog program, but the French did, and the French fought alongside the Americans, so they had the dogs. And the dog buried there right there is Sergeant Sparks. He was a German Shepherd, and he fought with the Marine Corps. His serial number is just 49, but he fought in 4 major campaigns. He came home. A year after he was home, he passed away. So he called up the Elko family and said, "Can I bury him right in front of the main monument?" And that's his gravesite. So up here is a brand new statue we just put up. So we think it looks good up there. Any other questions?
What kind of plans do you have for the War Dog Memorial? Do you have any more
plans?
Yeah, do you have any more plans that you're gonna add maybe?
Well, we made a list of all the things we wanted to accomplish out here, and and I'm quite happy to say that we're at the bottom of that list now. Just about everything we wanted to do is done. There's one thing left we wanted to do is put an irrigation well in, because when the volunteers come out to clean off all the black granite and water the plants, they have to carry the water. So we wanted to put a little small well in here, and that we're working on that right now. Other than that, it's pretty much just maintaining now. So we've already put them. I can't think of anything else we can do. So it's pretty much covered.
There one more person. How can we help with this War Dog Memorial?
How can you help?
Mm-hmm.
You can help by kind of spreading the word to let everybody know that there's some hallowed ground out here for canine heroes. And they can come and call me if the time comes, and we will take care of their service dog. One of our mission statements with our corporation is to educate the general public to the heroics these dogs have done, not only in war, but with the police department as well. So that's our job. These guys have no voice, so it's up to us to speak for them. And that's what we do. So spread the word.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Service dogs, we wanted all the stones to be the same. So what we do when we bury a dog is there's no charge to the animal. We don't charge them anything. We pay for the headstone, we pay for everything. If we're going to dictate what we want, we'll take care of it. And we get that through donations. And we've been very, very fortunate. People have stepped up to help us. Yeah.
Do you have any dogs in here?
She's down there. She was a therapy dog. She was an honorary member of the AMVETS in Milford. She went to all the meetings, photo ops, special events, and parades. And they made her an honorary member. And unfortunately, she got cancer. And then we got Bella. Bella was going to replace her. And we got her home. I had her about a week. She got totally sick. Took her to the vet and said, well, there's something major wrong. So we ended up going to Michigan State University up there. And when she was born, she had what they call a telescoping intestine, where it grew inside itself and it blocked everything. So they tried to operate, but she was just so little. But she was destined to be a therapy dog, and I said, no, she earned her place out here. So her headstone's right down there. She was only 12 weeks old, just a puppy. So. And then we got this monster.
She knows you're talking about her.
Yeah, you're being a good girl, yes you are. But she goes with me when I put on presentations of the history of war dogs and the development of the Michigan War Dog Memorial.
Did she serve anywhere?
No.
No, she doesn't.